2 years ago, I would have laughed at anyone claiming a 600-year-old building could heat itself better than modern HVAC systems. I spent decades assuming medieval people just froze through winter or burned endless wood. I was completely wrong. Standing inside a 1380s monastery in France last December, I watched the interior temperature climb from 62 degrees Fahrenheit to 71 degrees Fahrenheit as morning sunlight hit the south-facing stone walls. No heating system running, no fuel burning, just physics that medieval architects mastered and that modern construction deliberately abandoned. The energy companies didn't improve on medieval heating. They replaced a free system with one that bills you forever. Welcome to Forbidden Camping, where we crack open the vaults that the energy industry desperately locks shut. What I discovered in France wasn't an isolated phenomenon. Medieval architects in the 1200s built the Abbey of Fontenay using thermal mass principles that still heat the building 800 years later. These weren't primitive builders fumbling in the dark. They were master engineers who understood physics at a fundamental level. MIT's building technology program studied medieval passive solar design and confirmed it outperforms many modern heating systems, particularly in terms of temperature stability and resource efficiency. The findings mirror techniques that NASA uses aboard spacecraft for temperature regulation without power consumption. When you're millions of miles from Earth, you can't afford inefficiency, just like medieval builders couldn't waste precious resources. If these stories matter to you, hit subscribe and ring the bell to never miss a vault we open. What I'm about to share could transform how you think about home heating forever. The average American household spends $2,800 every year on heating costs alone. Think about that number for a moment. That's $28,000 over a decade. $140,000 over 50 years of your life. Money that vanishes into thin air, literally. Meanwhile, medieval buildings maintain temperatures of 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit through brutal winters using zero fuel and zero monthly bills. The contrast is staggering. A $3 understanding of thermal physics was replaced by $15,000 HVAC systems that require endless maintenance, regular replacements, and monthly fuel bills. Why would we abandon systems that worked for centuries? The answer is painfully simple. Anything that cannot generate recurring revenue has to be forgotten by the industry. A stone wall that heats your home for free for 800 years is a business nightmare. It creates no service calls, requires no replacement parts, and generates no monthly statements. The economic imperative is clear. Forget what works if it can't be monetized repeatedly. Let's travel back to 1147 in the Burgundy region of France, where Cistercian monks began construction on the Abbey of Fontenay. These weren't wealthy men with unlimited resources. They needed practical solutions for surviving harsh European winters with minimal fuel consumption. Their solution? Position every building with south-facing walls to capture maximum winter sunlight. The thick limestone walls, often 18 to 24 inches, absorbed heat all day as the low winter sun bathed them in direct light. As evening approached, these stone masses began slowly releasing that stored heat back into the interior spaces. The monks weren't just building walls. They created strategic window placement that generated natural air circulation, distributing warmth evenly throughout the structures. Smaller windows on north-facing walls minimized heat loss, while larger south-facing windows maximized solar gain during winter months when the sun's angle is lower. This technique spread rapidly across Europe. English castles, German monasteries, Italian villas all adopted identical principles tailored to their local climates and available materials. For 400 years, European families heated their homes with stone, sunlight, and strategic design that cost nothing to operate after initial construction. Then in 1885, Dave Lennox invented the modern furnace. This wasn't a response to the failure of medieval heating. It was because passive solar heating couldn't be sold monthly. You couldn't meter sunlight or charge for stone walls radiating stored heat. The business model required abandoning what worked for what could be billed repeatedly. Thermal mass works like a heat battery. Dense materials absorb energy slowly and release it over 12 to 18 hours. This creates a thermal flywheel effect that smooths out temperature fluctuations. Stone walls, 18 to 24 inches thick, can store enough solar heat during a 6-hour winter day to warm a space all night. The physics is elegantly simple. Materials with high specific heat capacity, like stone, brick, or adobe, absorb large amounts of thermal energy with minimal temperature change. As the ambient temperature drops, the temperature gradient reverses and heat flows back into the living space. The University of Bath conducted extensive testing of medieval buildings and found interior temperatures stayed within 5 degrees Fahrenheit of optimal comfort year-round, without any active heating or cooling systems. Their research confirmed what medieval builders understood intuitively. Properly oriented thermal mass creates living spaces that self-regulate. South-facing orientation is critical to this system because it captures maximum solar gain when the sun sits low on the winter horizon. In December, January, and February, when heating needs are highest, a south wall receives nearly 3 times the solar radiation of east or west walls. Modern stick frame construction with fiberglass insulation has virtually zero thermal mass. It operates on an entirely different principle, creating a barrier to heat flow rather than a reservoir for heat storage. The fundamental problem? It stops working the moment external heat stops. There's no thermal inertia, no flywheel effect, no energy storage capacity. Peer-reviewed studies confirm medieval thermal mass systems maintain consistent temperatures 3 times longer than modern alternatives after heat input ceases. A stone building continues warming through the night. A modern home begins cooling immediately when the furnace shuts off. The global HVAC industry generates over $180 billion annually, selling systems that require monthly fuel purchases. Companies like Lennox, Carrier, Train, and Rheem built business models on recurring energy consumption, not one-time construction solutions. You cannot patent limestone. You cannot trademark strategic building orientation. You cannot license the physics of thermal mass. Without ownership, there's no profit motive to preserve these techniques. Modern building codes in 47 states require mechanical heating systems, even when passive solar design would suffice. These regulations didn't emerge from safety concerns, but from systematic lobbying efforts. Energy companies began pushing these codes in the 1950s to guarantee market dependency. Thermal mass construction was deliberately labeled inefficient and outdated in industry literature, not because it failed, but because it eliminated monthly bills. The narrative shift required convincing homeowners that centralized mechanical systems represented progress rather than dependency. The evidence is hiding in plain sight. Medieval cathedrals, still standing after 800 years, maintain more stable interior temperatures than modern buildings erected last decade. This isn't primitive technology. It's sophisticated engineering that threatens a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream. Here's exactly how to apply medieval thermal mass principles to modern construction. These techniques work whether you're building new or retrofitting an existing structure. Orient your longest wall within 15 degrees of true south to maximize winter solar gain. This single decision determines 70% of your building's thermal performance. Even a modest deviation significantly reduces heating efficiency. Use concrete, stone, or adobe walls 12 plus inches thick on south-facing sides to create thermal mass. For retrofits, interior thermal mass, like stone feature walls or concrete floors exposed to direct sunlight, can achieve similar effects at lower cost. Install large windows on south walls with deep sills to capture and distribute solar heat. The sills aren't decorative, they're calculated surfaces that absorb and redirect radiation into the interior space. Minimize windows on north walls to prevent heat loss during cold nights. A homeowner in Colorado built using these principles. His heating bill dropped from $240 per month to under $30. The total additional construction cost? $8,000 up front saves $2,500 plus annually in perpetuity. That's a 3-year payback period followed by decades of nearly free heating. The most powerful evidence isn't theoretical. Visit any well-preserved medieval structure in winter. Stand inside as the morning sun hits the stone walls. Feel the temperature rise without a single watt of electricity or cubic foot of natural gas. The proof isn't in marketing materials, it's in the physics that hasn't changed in 8 centuries. This knowledge never disappeared from the planet. It was buried under $180 billion of HVAC marketing. Medieval thermal mass principles are still right there in physics textbooks and historical architecture. Your ancestors knew how to build homes that heated themselves for free. The energy industry spent 70 years convincing you that medieval techniques were primitive. They reframed dependency as progress. They transformed monthly bills into normal expectations. They redefined modern to mean requires constant payment. But today, standing here, you just learned the truth they tried to erase. Every stone cathedral, monastery, and castle still standing represents evidence of their deception. These buildings don't just survive, they outperform our modern alternatives in fundamental ways. If this vault opens something for you, subscribe and share it with everyone who deserves to know. We've been sold a story about progress that deliberately obscures centuries of sophisticated engineering. Everything the energy industry buried is inside the complete forbidden outdoor vault. The next vault opens soon, and what's inside weighs even heavier. Until then, remember, the most sustainable energy isn't what you generate. It's what you never needed to consume in the first place.